So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about conflict, and we're going to be talking about words. What do you think of this, Laura?
What?
How's that? That is a cow tongue.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah.
unbelievable?
Okay.
Let me see your tongue. That
Yeah.
is
I
a
thought
cow
this
tongue.
was a good idea.
So for those who
but
are
I'm
just...
a little worried about
For
it.
those who are just listening, this is a nice, like, scaly, it
Yeah.
kind of, you can feel
Oh,
all
gosh.
the stuff.
You just gotta keep it over that way. a
And
little
this
bit.
is a big,
Yeah.
giant cow tongue. It probably weighs 3 pounds or so.
Yeah.
And so the reason that we have this is to represent how the tongue can heal or crush your hearts.
Yes.
I'm Trevor.
And I'm Laura.
We have a deep passion for helping couples build strong, lasting relationships that truly thrive.
So we created Tools for Marriage.
Tangible, practical tools couples can start using right away.
Wherever you are in the world,
And wherever you are in your relationship.
we truly believe these tools can improve any marriage.
And maybe we put a few divorce lawyers out of business along the way. Proverbs 18:21, it says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue."
And in James 3:5-6, it says, "The tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. It is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body."
So the reason that we began with this tongue, this cow tongue, is because today we're going to be talking all about conflict. And it's so important to remember how the tongue, how words can affect us so deeply. So one thing about Laura and I is we love conflict.
We love it.
We just think it's fantastic.
It's absolutely
We love to
wonderful.
fight with one another.
Exactly.
It's great. No, I will say that conflict is now one of our favorite topics, which is funny because when we look back on it, we were both, and maybe still are, a little bit sort of people pleasers.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were adverse to conflict. The idea of fighting is something that's like, oh, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to create a fight or whatever. But now I feel like we can be much more truthful and honest with one another because we feel that we're able to manage conflict, I think, in a
Yes.
healthy way.
Yeah, like you said, I think both of us were, let's not talk about it, let's sweep it under the rug, because we thought it was bad. We were kind of scared to talk about it with each other. And what we found through going through all of the different books and things is that there's a healthy way of doing it, and that you're getting closer ultimately. I mean, that I feel like that's something that we've learned is that conflict actually brings you closer.
Right. And that seems sort of counterintuitive. You think about it because you're kind of like, oh yeah, couples who fight more, like they're less happy with one another. They're not close. They're distant. And so, yeah, I'm not saying that you need to encourage, fighting at every turn, but the reality is that happily married couples, they don't necessarily have fewer conflicts or tensions.
Yeah.
It's just that they handle it differently. They handle it in a healthy way.
Yeah, I think being honest with one another, telling your true feelings, saying it in a kind way so the other person can kind of understand you. And if you're just keeping that, it's almost like you keep a wall where the other person doesn't know what you're thinking, and things can get, I think, a lot more explosive.
I think that with every conflict that you go through in a sort of healthy way, you have a better understanding of one another. And so in theory, this concept of oneness we'll talk about in a minute, right, is that you're drawing ever closer to one another if you're handling conflict in a healthy way. You're showing your partner, you matter to me and I want to work through this with you, and I'm not against you, I'm for you, and trying to see the other person's perspective more clearly.
To be emotionally safe, that you think I can share my feelings and I'm not going to get judged or yelled at. I think the more we can open up and say, hey, I want to hear what you want to say, I think that also is really positive for a relationship.
That's right. And like Laura said, remembering that you're not on different teams, you're wearing the same jersey colors. You're not opponents, you're teammates. And there's a lot of stuff that the world's going to throw at you, right? The other team is there trying to destroy you. So internally within your own marriage, you need to be kind of on the same page and recognize we may not always agree, but we're on the same team. Right?
Kindness, like we talked about. Is it true? Is it kind? Saying it kindly.
That's right. And I remember you mentioned sometimes you're like, it's not wrong, it's just that you're different.
Different.
Right?
Yeah, not wrong, just different. I mean, we're each unique. We're not the same. We are different personalities. We have different backgrounds, preferences, and experiences. So it's natural we're going to not agree on things.
That's right. You need to acknowledge your differences without judging each other. And just if you have opposing approaches, if you look at things different, that doesn't mean that one of you is wrong and one of you is right.
Yeah, what's right, I think this is the way you do it. I'm right, you're wrong. And what's right for me, and to kind of go, somebody may think differently from what I have, and to be able to kind of listen to the other person and go, I don't know if I quite understand that. I'm going to listen to you.
Right. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the episode, a little bit about the curiosity, right? Adapting curiosity about why the other person feels the way that they do or thinks the way that they do.
Yeah. Instead of just, you're wrong. I'm just going to shut down. This is the way to do it.
Consider how harmful a careless comment can be in your relationship. What are a few examples, Laura?
I wish I never married you.
Yeah. Harsh, right? I'm not attracted to you anymore.
You're just like your dad, always angry.
Or why can't you be more like them? One of these sentences out of your mouth can crush a spirit and break a heart. It can't be taken back, and they may never forget what it was that you said.
Yeah. So I think like just the overall object lesson of this is the tongue and the power of it, and how it can just hurt a heart, your partner's heart, and you can never get those words back.
Yeah. And the tongue can also be used to uplift one another, right?
Yes.
So sometimes we hold back something that we might want to say that's a positive thing, a heart of gratitude to say something. And we think about those things that we remember deeply in our spirit. They can be those harsh words that we heard on a playground from a fellow student or from a teacher, or they may be those little things where someone said, hey, I saw this in you, or I really respect this about you, or notice this thing about you. Those things can just fuel your spirit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Using your tongue to uplift one another. And I also holding your tongue.
That's true. Did you want to hold the tongue, Dave?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
You sure? I think this object lesson continues.
That was a good one. And I'm glad we did it. And I'm glad it's over. But yes, like holding your tongue. Sometimes not saying something, kind of thinking about it before you move forward.
Absolutely right. Another verse is, the words of the reckless pierce like a sword. That's from Proverbs 12:18. They used to say, what was the sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And I think it's actually the reverse is true, right? Because, if you have your bone broken, as I did when I was a kid, it heals. I don't even remember it, right? But those words that were spoken to me as a child, those can wound and be carried with you well into your adult life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like the idea of speaking life and kindness and gratitude into each other daily.
That's right. I think one of the most important things is to pause before you speak, as Laura mentioned, hold your tongue, and then you ask yourself these questions.
Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind?
Yeah. When you do speak the truth in love, Ephesians 4:15. And also remember that you're not enemies. You're on the same team, even if you have conflict.
We talk about something about the same color jerseys. Like sometimes you think that they are your opponent, and you have to remember you're on the same team and
That's
kind of
right.
look at the same color jerseys, that we're not against one another.
Yeah, that's right. One analogy that we've heard is that marriage is like a raft that you're both in together. And so if you're poking holes in that raft, you're eventually both going to sink.
Down.
And I thought, boy, that is such a great analogy. One, it's not a yacht that you're on or whatever. It's a raft.
Going
you're in
through
it
the
together.
rapids.
Yes, right. The waves, whatever it is, whether you're in the ocean or whether you're going down a class 5 rapid, you're in it together, and you have to work together if you're going to survive and thrive. I remember Doug Fields at one of the Marriage Matters had such a beautiful analogy where he had some pink and some blue balloons, right? So he would pop a pink balloon, and then he would pop a blue balloon and a pink balloon, and it was sort of symbolized the idea of being in an argument and throwing barbs at one another, darts at one another, exactly, popping and hurting the heart, right? So if those balloons represented the heart, then he took a balloon out and he had a pink balloon inside of a blue balloon. And he said, there's no way that I can pop one of these without popping another. And so the idea is that we have one heart. If I hurt Laura, if I say something disrespectful or unkind to her and I hurt her heart, it's not like, oh yeah, chalk one up for me, right?
Yeah.
I just hurt my own heart. And when you think about that, you're like, even if you were selfish, you're like, boy, I don't want to hurt her because that's my heart.
Yeah,
right?
and saying I choose us instead of just this is what's best for me. It's like, what is best for our relationship?
That's right. And when you're in conflict, that loving confrontation, it isn't about scoring points or defending your side. Again, they're not your opponent. You want to try to strengthen that bond.
Yeah, yeah. So how many conflicts do a couple on average have per year?
Per year on average, big or small?
It's big.
Okay. No, the number is big or small, or the conflicts are big or small?
Conflicts. Yeah. Little, not any conflict.
Any conflict.
Yeah.
So even little conflicts. You're saying how often? Like 3 a month. So 660 maybe.
No, they say 312 times a year on average.
So some couples have more than 312 conflicts.
Yeah.
Okay, see that seems like a lot. We don't have that many conflicts, do we?
We don't, but I think early in our relationship, I think we really tried like, oh, good, we didn't have conflict.
Yeah, we sidestepped them.
That's true. So I
true.
don't think it's about the amount of conflicts. Right. It's how you deal with the conflicts.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's unlikely that you have couples on the other side of the screen or listening who have zero conflicts, right? It's just an inevitable part. I mean, a man and a woman, right? Just by default, you're going to have some friction. Your dance steps are not perfectly aligned when you step in because you just see things differently. You process things differently.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, and I really do like that. I do think that I thought in our image, we don't fight, or our marriage, that we don't fight, that how good that was.
Yeah, right?
And I think underneath there were things we needed to talk about.
True, and we would sidestep them or we wouldn't talk about them because we didn't want to ruffle feathers or cause problems. And yeah, it doesn't really go away usually.
If
you're not.
Talking about that, I think you and I both thought at a certain point, you're going to agree with me. That, as we fall more in love, you're like, you'll see that I'm right.
Right.
I'm the right one.
Yeah. And I guess the analogy there I sometimes use when we talk to couples and coach them is that, like, I like greasy Mexican food and sci-fi or whatever. I mean, just from a preference perspective, she's never going to come around to my side.
No,
even if
I try. Yeah. I try to watch sci-fi. I really do. And there's some that is good.
She does sometimes cross the aisle in a very kind way.
A lot of times, like, this doesn't
why did I do this?
How did that possibly happen? But yes.
But the idea is that, no matter how much we talk about it or how much I convince you or how many times you try some greasy Mexican food, right? It doesn't matter because you don't need to be me. There's something beautiful about the fact that we like different foods. We like different shows. We like different. And so I think that God, uniquely made us and we can appreciate the differences that each has. Right?
That's right. Yeah. They talk about perpetual problems, and that's the 69% of marital conflicts will be perpetual problems.
So there's solvable problems that you can work through and figure out, and then there's these insolvable problems that they would call perpetual that you're never going to resolve, and a larger proportion of them are things that you're never going to resolve.
That's right. I think sometimes money, like going out, like extrovert, introvert, those kind of things I think are a lot of times like, this is the way you do it. And so I think I just found that really fascinating.
Yeah. So even when you think about finances, right, you have saver and a spender. And those things are not like 5 years later, you look back and you're like, well, now I'm a spender. And before I was a saver. Those things are the way that you kind of are, right? And you need to learn how to navigate those things together, which can be difficult.
Well, and I think for the two of us with the whole financial thing that you were more of a saver and I was more of a spender. Not that either one of them we were like super hard and fast and that. But I think over the years we've found that we kind of understand one another better. Yeah. Once again, that I don't know if ever we're going to exactly agree.
Think alike, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and that's really not the goal, right? Is to just seek understanding, to seek closeness, to seek oneness, to seek appreciation for the differences, right? Because you bring amazing value to our family with the way in which you spend money, for example. One, you're responsible. Largely, you've taken on that responsibility out of the kindness of your heart to help with buying things for the family. So you're grocery shopping, for example, and I don't have to, but you have to make a lot of these decisions,
day to day.
But you're also very kind to understand my concern about how much we might spend on certain things, and so you'll make adjustments accordingly. And so the value and the benefit of having sort of the spender and the saver in the relationship and appreciating one another in that regard,
bringing in the strengths.
Yeah.
For each one of them. I think that was always, I think for us, a problem. Even though I had more of a spender, I wasn't as stressed about spending money. I think still it was kind of holding on to it and I think over the years of learning, this isn't our money.
Yeah.
It's his.
It's
money.
his. That's true. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That stewardship idea, I think, for both of us, right? For you, I mean, in terms of a spender, you're like, how can I use it to bless people, right? And as a saver, right? I'm like looking at it like, oh, my kingdom or whatever, and then realizing I'm not taking it with me. It's all about what I can do with what God has blessed us with,
but
right?
Stewarding it wisely.
That's right.
And I think that is something that over the years we've grown and learned. And I think being honest with one another, I think sometimes we'd have hard feelings of like, well, he thinks this and this, and she's doing this and this, instead of kind of sitting down together and understanding one another. So respectfully.
You know, just because you have these deep-seated differences, those may come from your personality or from your background or your values or your life experiences, you know, it doesn't mean, well, the relationship's doomed, right? And a lot of couples, if they go in with a sort of romantic mindset, the idea that either everything's just going to come together in a beautiful way, or maybe once I get into marriage, she'll change or he'll change, right? And that's not going to be the case. And so those things, they will show up again and again in your marriage, and you need to learn how to agree and to disagree with respect, right? And find a way to live peacefully and find workable solutions.
Our next one, I think, is so powerful, is keep the issue between the two of you. Not to share with mom, dad, sister, brothers, co-workers, the problems between you. I think that you, first of all, break trust.
Right.
If you're talking about your spouse behind one another.
Yeah, agreed.
And then, you can kind of explain, as you're talking to one of the family members, like, well, he does this and this.
Right.
So then the parent gets all upset and like, well,
they're on your team, right? So your family's going to be Team Laura, of course. And so they're just going to be like, oh, it sounds like he's causing all these problems or whatever. So they're going to, be frustrated with me, whatever. Then you and I will likely resolve the issue, but they'll still hold on to it, right? So that doesn't help. So the very first thing to do, obviously, is to turn towards one another, right? To keep it internal. And then, of course, in this situation where you have these perpetual problems, one, you can recognize this is a big and a perpetual problem. So we need to have extra measure of grace when we talk about this. And if we're in an impasse and we can't seem to find a workable solution or agree to disagree, so to speak, we can then go to a counselor, right? And there used to be a lot of stigma around going to a counselor, as though you admit that you failed or whatever and whisper in the dark or whatever. You're going to marriage counseling? Wow, things must be in... But wow, what beauty, you're looking at it, you're going, I'm really, really sick. I'm going to go to the doctor. Well, what a failure. It's like, no, I'm going seeking wise counsel. And so you go to a marriage counselor, and if they're a good marriage counselor, they've probably seen this issue before, right?
I think that's something for us where we've met so many pre-married couples. And I think that they sit down and they go, this and this and this is happening. And this, and we're going, gosh, that's so normal.
Right. We've seen it before. This is not the first time.
Nothing is going to shock us.
There's these repeated themes that come up over and over and over related to, either spending or in-laws or navigating conflict or differences of how they want to spend a weekend, And so we're not like looking at this going, what do we do? We're out of our depth, We can lovingly sort of coach them through understanding this is normal and it happens, and it doesn't mean the end of your relationship. And here's some strategies and how you can talk about these things in a healthy way.
And counseling, I think, is wonderful, but also a mentor couple. I think that is really powerful. In whatever stage of life or with your marriage is finding a mentor couple. Somebody you go like, how did you do your marriage? How did you get through this? And having that, I think, is so powerful, to be learning and have somebody who will pray with you, who wants the best for your relationship, that isn't going to sit behind and gossip and go, oh yeah, he's the worst. It's like, do you know what? Let's lovingly come towards this. Let's pray. Let's surrender this to God. Let's be kind to one another. And so I think that's just so powerful, of keeping the issue between you two. And like you said, turning in towards one another, working out, and if not, seeking wise counsel.
So now we'd like to talk about the groundwork for effective conflict resolution, right? The first thing is to start with the end in mind. To ask yourself, what is the outcome that we want here, right? You're putting on a long-term thinking cap rather than the immediacy of this particular issue. And when couples get married, they oftentimes, if they imagine where they want to end up, they're like, I want to be married for 50, 60, 70 years. They see that older couple in the park holding hands or looking at one another lovingly, and they're like, yeah, that's what I want, right? And so when you think about beginning with the end in mind, then it takes you to a longer term. It lets you zoom out a little bit rather than just get so connected at the thing that's just right there in front of you. And so you can continue with the next one.
Yes, I just really love that idea is before you open your mouth that you go, where do I want this to go? Do you know, like, how do I want this to end? Do I want to separate and upset, or am I trying to find resolution? And so I really love that. It's me, instead of me versus you, it's us versus the problem. Coming alongside one another and like, we have something to deal with. Let's, instead of it turning towards, let's like, here's the problem. How long term can we fix that? So I think that's just a powerful, and I also love that, telling that to couples is begin with the end in mind. That when they're getting married, it's like, what do you want it to look like when you guys are 70 years old? What do you want it to look like 5 years from now? Because you kind of have that wedding day and everything. You kind of go towards the wedding and not really thinking of long term.
Yeah, what does the marriage look like, right? And you think about it for any big project, any company, they're sort of like, all right, what's our 5-year strategy, 10-year strategy, 20, 50-year strategy, right? And so if you think about where you want to end up, then you can take those baby steps to get there, those practical steps every day to get where you want to end up. Work towards a win-win solution, right? A lot of times we end up in sort of a win-lose situation. And of course, you're always going to think about win over here, but you're like, how do I win? But if I win, do they lose? And again, this idea that the two of you are in a raft and you poke a hole in it and you're like, I won. And the water starts coming in. It's like, well, you didn't really win, right? So it's not me versus you. Again, it's us versus the problem. And how can we come up with a win-win strategy or solution?
Yeah, and this is really a new idea. That you think, how can we possibly find a win-win solution to this? And they talk about what you can do is like, if there's a problem that you both are dealing with, is that you go, okay, let's brainstorm with one another. What are ways that you can kind of compromise, or so you don't always, like you said, feel like like, fine, they can win. And you're always the loser, or we're going to do this and both of you feel like a loser. Of really kind of coming up like with different ideas and brainstorming, like I said, and saying, well, if you took on this extra work and I took on this extra work, I might not feel so upset about what we're having to do.
And I think the idea too of also when you identify and you know what the problem is and you're looking at it together, again, same jersey colors, and you're looking at the issue and you're saying, okay, we need to tackle this issue. Like, how can we do that together, right? You're taking a break, you maybe even pray together, right? And you're looking at, you're going to get a different perspective. The issue's probably going to shrink a little bit because you're saying, hey, at the end of the day, we both want to resolve this, correct? So you can also, what are the things that you actually do agree on? Well, I agree that we want to have a loving marriage. We want our home to feel peaceful. We don't want it to feel like a place of tension. We both want to have some alone time, but we also want to do things together. So you agree on the things that you agree on. It's like, okay, so we're aligned on these things. So now, by being very clear with one another, what can we do about this particular issue? And, that doesn't mean that when you resolve it in a win-win, that everything is perfect every time, but you can both feel heard and you can feel honored and you can feel supported and you can feel like you're moving together as a team.
Yeah. And of course, it's not always win-win, that it's always going to look that way. But I think that's just a powerful way of like, let's look at it that way. And also as you're brainstorming, you go, okay, maybe we do this, maybe we do this. and you choose on something, and then that's not your forever solution.
Right,
that doesn't have to be.
You're not necessarily setting it in stone and saying every time this happens, this is exactly what we're going to do. You're just kind of penciling it in. Mm-hmm. This is the one that we think is best for now, and then you kind of stick it up on the fridge or whatever, and you say, let's revisit this the next time it happens, or in 2 weeks or whatever. And if it doesn't seem like it's working, if it doesn't seem like it's a win-win solution, then you say, let's revisit, let's brainstorm again, right? This is what you might do in a healthy company. You say, well, what are we going to do this quarter? Well, we're going to try these things, right? Mm-hmm. And you put it up on the board and you say, we're going to try this one, and we're going to revisit this next month, and we're going to see how we're doing.
And I do think also, if it always feels like win-lose, where you're always just letting the other person win, and you're just like, never mind, I'll just
give in, and
and I think that builds up walls, and the other person isn't hearing, and they're not mind readers. I think that's another good one, where they don't know what you want. They're not understanding. If you're shutting down, fine, I'm just going to lose. I'm just going to take that. Like I'll take the raw end of the deal. Yeah.
So being able to clearly express your needs or your desires, I think, is an important part of it too. And if each person is hearing what the other person says, and they're able to see that clarity is kindness, right? Mm-hmm. You're speaking what it is that you need, and the other person is hearing that, and you're allowing them to do the same.
Yeah, your expectations of being clear of like, this is what I want, and then the other person, this is what I want, and then how can we work together in that?
So what are some kind of win-win communication phrases? What might you hear in a sort of a healthy marriage?
I understand your perspective. Let's find a solution together.
That's good.
Let's brainstorm some ideas and revisit them after a few days. And I believe we can figure this out together.
Yeah, that's nice. And you think about, conflicts or fights that you've had, is this what it sounds like? Is there healthy stuff coming out? Because, a lot of times in the unhealthy, situations when conflict comes up, it's a lot more about, I need, and you always, and you never. And, you're really not listening, right? You're just speaking. Each person wants to be heard, until they're just speaking and nobody's really listening, right?
Yeah. And then you kind of said something, clarity is kindness. Yeah. And I love that word.
Yeah.
Like, they're not a mind reader, being clear and specific about what you want.
Yeah. And also expressing a heart of gratitude for your partner, right? Even something about, I'm really glad that you also see that this is an issue that we need to work on, and that you want a positive outcome. I really appreciate that about you as a wife or as a husband, or just, I appreciate that you're listening to me, right? That you're hearing me. And these things can extend beyond that. Thanks for my favorite meal. Thanks for going grocery shopping, or filling the gas tank. The more we express and look for things to be grateful for, the more we're going to find them, and the more we train ourselves to do that. And the less that we train ourselves to do that critical thing, where each little critical nagging thing that we don't like, we don't need to speak those things, and we don't need to be looking for them. So we're going to walk you through a few different tools that can help you to have healthy conflict in your relationship, or to manage conflict in a healthy way. The first one is the power of empathetic listening.
Yeah, to really understand where the person is coming from. Open-ended questions of saying, I see you, I value you, I hear you. As somebody's telling each other, like, this is what I feel, this is what I want, for the other person to go, okay, like, come from that person's, be in their shoes, and saying, okay, I might not feel that way or do something like that, but I can understand being who this person is, and that why they might be coming from that stance. Yeah, that's right. And I think that even the reflective listening exercise, it's kind of a mirror exercise. If you're expressing your feelings and I'm simply repeating to you exactly what you said, boy, it feels like empathy is being established. Like, you really heard me, you really understood me, right? Yeah. And then also I think that curiosity mindset, which we'll talk about next. It's curiosity over criticism. Right? So when a conflict arises, it's crucial to avoid blaming each other and shifting the focus over to this me versus you, but to actually start asking questions like, why do you think that way? Why do you feel that way? Right? Yeah. And I think this is really a good one, especially, I will just say, for guys who sometimes want to fix the problem, right? It's just like, okay, I've heard what you said. Now here's the things that you should do. Here's how you should fix it. And a lot of times,
Laura might just be saying, I just need to process through this. I just need to talk this out and to have someone hear me, as opposed to me trying to fix. And so for me, instead of just saying, great, go ahead, let your words wash over me and I won't say anything, even though my desire is to help, I can actually turn that desire to help into curiosity. So I can say my job here is to try and find out why she's feeling this way. What made her so upset? And I can say, what feelings are you having? And what's triggering that? Has that ever happened to you as a child, right? And I can just be more and more curious about her, which I think will make you feel heard and understood.
Yeah, I think that's something I think you do such a good job. I'll be all upset about something and you'll listen to me. And I really love that you're not like you said, the fix, or do you know that person has a point? Like you're on my side. Yeah. And you're like, I think one of the big ones is that makes sense. That to me is so wonderful, where I can talk and just be so upset. And you just going, that makes sense.
Yeah, and that makes sense is interesting, because it's not saying I completely agree with you 100% or whatever, but I understand how you're feeling in light of the circumstances you're experiencing, and that just feels like I'm on your side, I'm on your team.
Yes, yeah,
right?
And listening to me, and like you said, I think that criticism is so, as soon as you do that, also I just think you shut down. It's like you're too emotional. You shouldn't feel that way. You're such a whiner. I mean, those kind of things, you're like, okay, I'm not sharing my feelings ever again.
Right.
And that's where we're talking about a safe place for one another. Like, I want to make this a safe place where I can talk about whatever, bring up whatever, of course, in a kind way. And the other person's going to listen. They're going to ask questions. They're not going to try to fix. In an earlier episode, we had fix versus listen, of having the two paddles. And most of the time, just listen.
A listen paddle. Yeah.
A lot of times with the fix thing, you have thought of every single thing, and sometimes you just need a process and then you find the fix.
Yeah. It makes me think, actually, it might be a useful exercise in your relationship to ask the other person, do you feel safe expressing your deepest feelings to me?
Yeah.
It's an interesting question, right? Because, if they hesitate, or if they say no, they don't feel safe, then what would it take for you to feel safe? And why don't you feel safe, right? And it may be, well, there's one time where I mentioned this and then you said this, and that's part of the reason now that I'm closing down. And what you want when you think about that oneness is you want your hearts open, more and more and more open to one another, rather than starting to close down. And it's human nature. If you feel like you got slapped or hurt, or someone said something unkind, boom, you close it down, right? And it's only in the safety of feeling understood and someone having empathy and curiosity that safeness is there for you to actually express, this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah, they talk about a state of the union of once a week sitting down and being honest with one another. And those are hard
talking
questions.
About when you say state of the union, you're talking about the state of the marriage, the state of the relationship,
marriage, or just or how are things going? And I think those are difficult questions of like, where have I hurt you? Where were there times? And I think that those are difficult, because I think a lot of times, like, I didn't mean that, or this is what I. And to
the
really,
justification for what you said or what you did.
Yes, and to just have that time, and the state of the union, when you're whatever you can call it. This is going to be a safe place. We're going to pray about it. We're going to, I think, like, I love you. I think starting touching,
right?
Just saying,
that
I love
connection
you.
And truth,
That's right. And I want to get to a better, for us to be better. And so I think that's a great way to start. It's like, I love you so much. And this is the end of this. We're not going to divorce.
Yeah, right.
We're going to start working through this. And I think if you just can set aside that time each week, you're going to understand each other more and more. And then I don't know if you need it as long of an hour per week, that you kind of are able to
just those regular check-ins with one another to say, how are we doing, right? Because sometimes that just gets lost in the shuffle in a busy world, especially when kids enter the story, right? This notion of stopping and saying like, hey, how are we doing, right? So that's why it's so important to maintain your date nights, to maintain some couch time, some mommy daddy time. It's kind of like, hey, this is where, when it's possible to get a family member, a friend to watch the kids, even so you can go for a walk in the park, just some time to connect with one another is just so important.
Yeah, it's very positive. And I think absolutely someone said, that you think, well, I can't afford a vacation, or I can't afford babysitting, and they said,
vacation, I think, is
vacation is a lot less expensive than divorce. And I think that's so powerful. I know for the two of us, when the two of us have gotten away with one another, where I'm able to not worry about dishes and you have work and laundry and all the different things, where we're able to have an adventure with one another and to just spend time with one another. I think that for us, those were very powerful times. And I don't know if we did as much as I would recommend, because
took as many vacations and breaks.
Yes, but I think it is difficult. Like you said, with kids,
difficult, but so important. So important. What about timing? What do you think about timing in terms of bringing up conversations? It's if you have a couch time, if you have a date night, if you have a state of the union, if you will. But what about in the day to day? Why is timing so important?
Well, I think things can get hot. Things can get heavy. You get upset. You start in at each other. And I think you go, do you know what? This isn't the time. Let's put a bookmark. Let's kind of say, do you know what? We're going to come back to this. Yeah. But I think...
What are some of those bad times? Tell me what you think are bad times.
I think when you're hungry.
Hungry is a big one.
I think when you're tired. I feel that if you have a lot of stress going on, and I think that you a lot of times then can take it out on the other person too, when you're super upset, where you kind of go, okay, let me take a deep breath. Let me think where this is coming from. Yeah,
that's right. And it's, it's tough because, when in a situation in a young, busy couple's life, are you not tired or stressed or hungry or whatever, right? You almost have to just carve out these intentional times where the two of you get to talk, because that can be a real difficult. You're like waiting for the perfect time to bring something up. There may not be a perfect time, but that's also why it's important that the approach, not just the timing, right, but the approach. And so there's there's these researchers, right, doctors John and Julie Gottman, and so
so much of what we talk about is from the two of them. They are experts on marriage. They've been studying this forever. We have a lot of great books. That's many things. So so much. This is so many other people's wisdom.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, Laura is, always reading books, always reading studies and research, and trying to get the latest thing and sort of figure out, or the timeless thing, really, not just the latest that comes off the tabloid, but the most, the best research, so that we can bring some of these ideas and concepts together. And so John and Julie Gottman are these marriage researchers, and they have this thing called the Love Lab, which I think is kind of interesting name, but they've got sort of an observation room where they can observe couples, and they can see and they can predict in mere moments, because of their expertise, whether or not they think a particular couple is going to stay together or not, based on the way that they see them interact, right? And so they've got this concept called a soft startup, right? So what is a soft startup, Laura? What does that mean?
Well, it means that when you come in to talk to someone about your conflict or something that's going on, you come in gently and respectfully, not with blame or sarcasm or criticism.
Okay. So if they have the soft startup on one side, what's the opposite of that? What do they call that?
The harsh.
The harsh startup, right? Yeah. So a soft start and a harsh startup, I think, is the terminology that they use. So give me an example of each of those.
Yeah. So one is you never help with the chores.
Okay. So I'm going to call that one a harsh startup, right?
Yeah. Right. The soft one is I've been feeling overwhelmed with the housework building up. Can we find a way to share it better? Right. And I think between the two, one you go, wall, and the other one is like, okay, let's sit down, let's talk about it. Yeah,
it's interesting because you say wall, but I think that might be your personality. Someone comes at you and you go wall, right? And other people are like, oh yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you come at somebody and you're like, you never help with the chores, you're like, well, I never help with the chores. You're the one who, right? And all of a sudden, bam, 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 you're in this big fight, you're in this big conflict. And so I like that. So the idea of a soft start. So you start with how you feel, right? How you feel. So I've been feeling overwhelmed, right? And then what you need. And so, I need this versus what the other person did wrong.
Yeah, right? And you never help with the chores.
Right.
Like you always.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you're pushing something.
That's right.
And putting that towards the person. And like you said, what you feel. And a lot of times this is what I feel. You're not pointing this.
Right.
Is
So
what
there's no debate really about what you feel. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling upset, if you're feeling burdened, I can't really debate with that, right?
That's right.
But then when you share what you need, that I can maybe step into. I could help, especially if I don't want you feeling overwhelmed or burdened. So it feels a little bit like an invite into someone's world versus coming in and just like change your behavior, which nobody likes that critical
yeah,
spirit.
and if we are talking chores, I think once again the expectations, and once again you're sitting down together. You're looking for a win-win.
Yeah.
Once again,
right?
That you're sitting down and saying, okay, how can this look? Both of us feel that we've won this, or that we both have felt heard or valued, listened to.
Yeah. So there are two conflict styles that we talk about, and they're sort of these metaphors for these conflict styles. Explain what those are.
Well, the first one is a turtle.
Okay.
And that is the two of us.
Yeah, we're both turtles.
And so we turn away
right
from confrontation.
Yeah.
That
okay.
we just like, we're not going to talk about
But not
it.
everybody's a turtle. What's the other conflict style?
A rhino.
A rhino. Okay.
Yeah. So they come in and they want to talk about it, and they want to talk about it now.
Yeah.
And like, talk to me. Don't go away from me.
I see. So the rhino's not necessarily like the you always, you never. It's just this issue on the table. Let's go. Let's fix this thing, right? So it's not necessarily charging with the rhino horn at the other person, but just let's attack this problem right now. I don't want to leave it unsettled, right? Which can be a loving place to come from. But the turtle is a little more prone to want to process at least, right? To spend a little time.
And I think that this happens a lot. We a lot of times within couples have the turtle and the rhino, where I think that the person gets upset, they're having a conflict, and the turtle goes, I need to go away. I need to think about this. I need some space. I need to process. Well, the other one's left there kind of going, I want to talk about this. Let's work on this. And so once again, neither one is wrong. It's just a lot of times how you're wired. And I know for me, I need to process. If there's something that, conflict that arises, I a lot of times don't want to just go for it. I'm like, just a minute. I need time to think. Now, I think the hard part for me was I would go away to think or I process and not come back.
Oh, because of the nature, the kind of people-pleasing nature, not conflict averse. The idea is that I'm going to go away and think about it and process it, but not really address it. Maybe it kind of goes away. So it's important then, if you're sort of a turtle conflict style, to make certain that once you're done processing whatever, at least you communicate with the rhino style. I do want to address this. I just need some space. And can we talk about this tomorrow, or can we talk about this in an hour or something, right? To make certain that you do return.
That you speak. And once again, if you're finding each other a peaceful place, a protected place, that you're able to listen to one another, that's going to help a lot. And sometimes rhinos can be like upset and forward, which makes a turtle even go deeper
right into that
their
shell.
Like and so I think those are very common, and I see a lot of times with couples opposite. Right.
And the interesting thing about it though is just to understand. If you understand that the other person is a turtle and needs some time to process or whatever, then you can deal with that more respectfully, and understanding when a rhino wants to go and attack, that it might be not an attack to you, but just I want to resolve this problem. I want to get this sorted out. I don't like this uneasiness behind us. And so, at least understanding those styles, especially when they're opposites, can be super helpful to not go like, you always run away from all the problems. It's like you always come in yelling and you won't even give me time to think, right? You're actually going back to their styles that are different and creating more of an issue than needs to be created.
I would say within our relationship, I would say there is a little more Rhino in you. And once again, we're not saying that it's bad, but I feel you are like, let's talk about this right now.
I don't want to leave a problem out there because it feels unsettled. So I would rather we resolve it. And so the idea as a turtle, when you talked about, going away to process, it's kind of like, okay, but when are we going to talk about it, right? That idea, that connectedness, I guess, is part of why I think that tendency to chase and to say, talk, yell, whatever you need to do, but connect to me as opposed to shutting me off. But now I think we've learned to navigate that a little more because it's like, okay, she needs time to process and you're not going to leave it unsaid. We'll address it. And therefore I can relax a little bit.
I thought that was something early in our marriage was when there was a conflict, I'd always like, I'm out or I'm going to shut down. And one of our first fights, I went turning towards the door to march out and you said, turn around, talk. And it was so scary for me. It was just like, I don't even know what to say. And as we've gone through our marriage, and I think he's safe. He's safe. I mean, you're extremely safe where you just listen to me. You're so kind. I'm so sorry you're feeling that way. And how can I help? But I think for me, that has been so positive. I think if you had like come at me or been critical of me, I just think we would be in a different relationship. But I just think both of us have an openness of like, I love you. I want to hear you. I want to know you. I want you to have the best life that you can. How can I come alongside you? It's just been beautiful. And I do say that this wasn't something that we just naturally, I think really it was God in the center of it. Yeah. Humbling
and it's good too because I hope I allow you to process your thoughts before they've been completely filtered and sanitized and figured out. It's like if you're upset, just say you're upset, just like whatever. I'm not going to really take that to heart. And of course, you're very kind not to turn around and say you always, you never, and things that might wound. Right? You're thoughtful in the way you share it, but it's not like you have to go and process and journal and get it down to a distinct paragraph to share with me. You can process on the fly, which I think
I think there are times though where I get super hot and we've talked about in a previous podcast talking about I sometimes just need that we talked about the cards, prayer cards that you can write something out. There's sometimes I do need to process that I need to write it down. I do need to think about it. So yes, you are very safe to do that, but I think also I still do need time to think about it and also pray about it and to go, I am so upset about this is the most frustrating thing. And then you put it aside and then a couple hours later you pick it up and go like that wasn't
no longer applicable maybe.
That's right.
Yeah. So, one thing we talk about is trying to keep the issue. So, when an issue comes up, a lot of times you can drag other issues into it, right? So you have this issue, it comes up between the two of you, and then you're like, this is just like the other time, and you load up all these issues. And so one of the pieces of advice that we have for couples who are entering into a marriage relationship is to try to not bring in more issues, to try and tackle one issue at a time. It's going to just be a lot more clear when you sit and brainstorm. You're not having to brainstorm all the problems that you have or conflicts that you have, but just this particular one. And then the other thing is to if you visualize the issue, we've talked about this in the past as a sort of a ball between the two of you. If you can take it and kind of visualize yourself putting it out in front of you, moving closer, moving side by side, noting that you're wearing the same jersey colors. This person is not your enemy. And you're looking at it and saying, this is the issue that we need to face and we need to face it together. How can we do that in a healthy way?
And once again, that could be the win-win ideas where you have the issue out there, you're shoulder to shoulder, and you're like, well, with money, you have the issue of money, and it's like, okay, well, let's sit down and talk about how we can decide how we want to budget, how we want to give, listen to one another. So, I mean, those are things I think you're also, when you're putting the issue in front, another bringing in the win-win idea.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the things that it also prevents is it prevents you going to a personal attack, right? If you've got it out in front of you and you're looking at the issue, you're less prone to go, you always, you never, you're the one who, you caused it, and you go on this personal attack. And of course, we're human nature such that when you get attacked, you tend to attack back, or you're just going to shut down completely. We're not even going to talk about this, and do the cold shoulder, right? So if you can avoid that personal attack, and then of course when personal attacks get to a certain point, someone's going to throw out, we should get a divorce, or I don't know why I was with you in the first place, right? You get to these things that just should never be said in your relationship.
Can't be brought back.
That's right. They should just never, I don't know why I'm with you in the first place. Like, how are you going to mend and repair that one, right? So if you can, again, you want to de-escalate, keep it out of that relationship level, keep it out of the personal attack, get it back to that single issue, and then look for a win-win solution.
Yeah, I think that is so powerful. I mean, as I'm thinking through all these, just all the different concepts of coming together, of dealing with conflict, of dealing with one another, how to make this healthy, coming in, soft startup, win-win, timing, listening to one another, empathetic. I mean, bringing in, I think even one of those things, I mean, tell the story of how can I make your day better?
Yeah, this was an amazing story. So, a gentleman I know, we were talking, and he was just really having a difficult time in his relationship with his wife. And he was not saying it's her fault, it's my fault, whatever. He was just basically saying, this is the situation, and we've turned into roommates, and I don't really know what to do. And so I said, well, one of the things that you might try is just to say to her, how can I make your day better? Just ask, how can I make your day better? And see what happens, right? And she may say, well, I want you to do this or do that or whatever, or maybe she can't think of anything. But then the idea is just to continue whatever she asks. If it's reasonable, do that thing for her, because that helps make her day better. And so that's exactly what he did. And she got a little skeptical, right? Because, if they don't have a great relationship and all of a sudden you're like, how can I make your day better? It's like, what are you up to? What are you trying to get out of this situation? But he was just asking, how can I make your day better? She asked him, she said, do I have to answer right now? And he said, no, this isn't, this is open-ended. I'm just want our better relationship. How can I make your day better? And so she would start to kind of answer. And then, a few days later, he continued to ask, how can I make your day better? How can I make your day better? And she's she woke up really late one day. She doesn't usually sleep in. All of a sudden, she's really stressed out. And so he's like, in the vein of, how can I make your day better? He's like, I'm going to make her tea, and I'm going to help her get her stuff over in the dryer, and I'm going to kind of get her off into the car and send her on her way. And he did, And she texted him, and she was like, wow, that was so incredibly helpful. You don't know how helpful that was. I made it. I'm safe. I wasn't later than I thought I was going to be. Thank you so much, or whatever. And a couple days later, she started asking him, how can I make your day better? Right?
It's so amazing because it's something we read in a book.
That's right. Yeah.
And he just mentioned it. And then he came back with this story.
Right. Like not my idea, but I thought, that's really neat because it just shows that servant's heart and the attitude that we should have in the marriage relationship. And so I just thought, just start with the heart and try to, just lay it down a little bit. And he did. And just to see it kind of soften her heart was beautiful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's another one that you wanted to talk about, this little formula. Tell me about it.
So it's called the XYZ formula.
The Examine Your Zipper formula.
Well,
that's not
what
it is?
It's a little different.
Oh, okay.
So the way it goes is, in situation X, when you do Y, I feel Z. And so an example would be, when we're with friends.
That's X, right?
And you interrupt me.
Y.
I feel dismissed.
Z.
And so I just think fill in the blank of telling them when this happens.
Yeah, with your feelings, right?
Feelings,
yeah.
And then when you do, and this is how I feel. Mm-hmm. So I thought that's a nice one. Once again, you're getting away from you always. You're showing expectations. You're letting the other person know what's going on. Clarity. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of a powerful thing. The zipping up zipper. There's also, if your zipper's open.
Also, let them know if their zipper's open. I think that's a kindness that you can, or that when there's something in their teeth.
Oh, that's a big one.
Right? That's a huge one in a relationship. We'll add a whole other 5-hour episode all about helping someone tell them about the broccoli in their teeth. All right. We have another good one we like. This is the water break rule, right? So we actually heard this when we were sitting down with a couple, and he was actually a police officer. And so he was explaining that one of the things that they'll do when they've arrested someone or whatever, when things get hot, even for themselves, is they'll take a break and they'll take a sip of water. And what it does is it actually moves you out of this kind of fight or flight situation where you're not thinking clearly. You're just, am I safe, right? And it actually cools that down, and it moves the blood flow back to the front of your brain where you can actually think more clearly and more logically.
Yeah, more reasoning. I mean, I think drinking a glass of water, going for a walk,
right, taking
praying,
a deep breath, right?
Yeah, because I think you get in this, am I safe? I've got to fight. And so that's when words can come out. That's when things can get tense. And instead of like, I'm going to take a break, I'm going to let me process things once again. I'm going to give it some time and then be able to come back.
And you have that book, do you not? That
Yes.
Try Softer?
Try Softer.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend it.
So for those who are listening, she's just holding up a book here called Try Softer. This is by, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Andy Kobler. Is that right? Yeah. And so little picture of the brain there, just kind of talking a little bit about the prefrontal cortex, the limbic system, and the brain stem. So
when you get overwhelmed, your brain can go in that fight or flight mode, and that with a drink of water, with taking a walk, with prayer, it can switch you back into reasoning, where you're able to reason and empathize with one another.
Yeah,
so.
That's right. Because, when you're overwhelmed, then your brain, it just goes into this kind of fight or flight mode. And this just helps switch back to reasoning, back into the prefrontal cortex where you can think more logically. So you can always call, a little water break, or even for yourself, if you find yourself just kind of getting hot or whatever, you're like, I'm just going to get a quick drink of water. And it can actually sort of help what's happening, in your brain. A really great concept that we feel has been very... I
wanted to talk about that one.
I think this is the one I'm talking about. You're talking about the last one. I know, but you talked
about the one last
time. I know,
time.
We don't necessarily have to go back and forth, back and forth.
That says, it says Laura. This is the one I
all
wanted
right,
to
can we
talk
hold
about.
on. So can we just rewind?
Yes.
So we learned this rewind or reset concept from a couple that we were coaching. They were saying that when they get into a bit of an argument, one of them will actually just call out reset, right? And it's a way that they can just stop what they're doing, stop talking about it, and sort of reset the conversation so they can have a more healthy approach to it. So we call this the rewind, the reset, or the start over method.
One of the things I like that they talked about is, wait, I don't like how I said that. Let me start over. And I think that that's wonderful, where you get upset and you're like, okay, reset. And I mean, also you can make it a little funny.
That's right.
Do you know, like both reset?
Yeah, because you recognize things are getting heated. So either person can just call reset, right? And it just sort of calms things down a little bit.
Yes, or do you know, I came in a little hot. Let me rephrase that.
That's right. Yeah. The Bible reminds us in Proverbs 15:1 that a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger.
That's what I love, is that we can talk about all of this, and you'll open the Bible and it will say something like that. I mean, God's word is so powerful. That's right. I think it's really important to keep in the Bible individually and as a couple. And I think that's the most powerful thing, is bringing God into the midst of the conflict.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, the Bible talks about the cord of three, right? So it talks about when you believe in the Lord, right, and the two of you get married, it's a cord of three. It means the Holy Spirit is present in your relationship. So he's present when you're having a great time and when you're just hanging out. He's present when you're intimate with one another, because he's blessing that or whatever. But he's also present in the situation where you have conflict. And so you're inviting him even more into that conversation and saying, Lord, just move in our hearts to let us see each other as you see us. Right? And a lot of times he can just allow you to let things go that aren't that big of a deal, right? We always feel like, well, I'm feeling this way, I gotta say something about it. You don't always, right? You can hold your tongue. Not like Laura, who doesn't want to hold the cow tongue, but you can hold your own tongue and you can not say something. So you can ask the Holy Spirit, help me to just let this go if need be.
Yeah, I do feel like that when you start getting like, oh, I'm getting upset for the two of you, say, hey, can we pray real quick? And I think that also, I mean, bringing him into the center of it, bringing his peace, his joy in the midst. So I so much enjoyed doing this episode. It's funny
likewise.
because a few years back, I think like, hey, Trevor, Laura, let's talk about conflict. I think the two of us like, oh,
that's not for us.
Right.
A couple turtles run for the hills.
That's right. So, but just learning all these new techniques and tools is so powerful.
These concepts have helped and changed us over time, and we think that they can help you too.
We're excited sharing these powerful tools for healthy conflict and better communication.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening.
Please subscribe or follow to get notified with each new episode of the Tools for Marriage podcast.
We're cheering you on.